Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice small break. We can now move on to into our second session. It's going to be a bit longer, where we will explore standards and policy activities within Horizon Europe projects. So let's get started with the first presentation. Our first speakers for this session is Thomas. So it's Gabriele. Sorry.
Gabriele, yes.
Sorry, Gabriele.
No.
Gabriele Giunta and Alonso Basic, who will present the joint policy brief from the ATLANTIS and Sunrise projects. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Now I'll stop sharing my screen. Let's see if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Perfect.
Excellent. Good. So, good morning. My name is Gabriele Giunta from engineering, and today I'm going to present a joint work made between the ATLANTIS Horizon project and Sunrise, which are two broader projects. This is a joint work, so the representative of the ATLANTIS project is a project coordinator. Of course, there is also Aliosa Pachets, which is the Sunrise project coordinator. Further details on such a joint policy brief will be showcased by and presented by Tomas and Aliosa in the next two presentations. So quickly, I would like to start presenting the roadmap. Started, let's see, as you can see, 1 year ago, more or less. So it's a long time to prepare such joint work. Initial discussion was made between me and the previous project coordinator of Sunrise at the security research event in Brussels 2023. It was in October, and we started discussing about how to prepare something, how to make some joint initiatives, and for instance, how to prepare our joint publications, joint events in order to boost and to improve the second period of our two projects, which we are going to end in 2025. After this initial discussion, we had a preliminary set of telcos in the spring 2024, just to identify, okay, what we have to do actually. So we have time to prepare something by the end of the year. So let's try to think about some concrete opportunities. And we start involving also other two research projects. EU-CIP, also presented by Hannah in the first session during the morning, and the EU-ABNet, which is another research project related to the investigation of hybrid threats. Of course, with the supervision and the support of the ECSCI Cluster. We have we start discussing about such first initial idea of having a standardization and policy making event on the European critical infrastructure. We start also thinking about what we have to do, because our projects are more or less the same time, the same deadline, the same timeline, and also we would like also to consider the consortium of such projects, which comprise security practitioners, representatives of several governments, stakeholders, academics, and small medium enterprise, and also industry players. It was the initial work, of course, in the mid of this year, and in July 2024, we start also preparing in the two different projects, ATLANTIS and Sunrise, individually, of course, policy task forces within also policy impact areas and related topics. There was also a chance to set up several working groups, policy task force working groups, and policy-related activities. The two projects have been involved in the two different policy task force, and it was quite interesting. There was a quite interesting collaboration that also conduct us to identify potential overlaps and similarities between the policy related activities of the two projects. There was also in July a first concrete discussion to prepare such a template of the policy brief. It was circulated, and the initial discussion on the policy recommendation and policy brief on how to do that. Also considering the organization of such event in early December 2024, that was effectively effectively prepared by Thomas and Mariana. In October 2024, there was also several meetings to start preparing such policy brief. The template was finalized, and there was also some identification of some relevant key findings and also the context of the policy brief. In November, we decided also to identify how to final agreements and how to arrange such critical infrastructure policy brief. It was set up actually during the CIPRE and the EU-CIP annual conference in Madrid. So there was an agreement, a final agreement during such conference, and of course we took the final decision on how to go with such joint webinar, and to complete the version that will be ready to be shared in very few hours. And the proofreading was completed and final version published. Going briefly towards the work behind the the policy brief. So actually the context of the policy brief is of course related to the critical infrastructure, critical entities, which all of us knows that are fundamental and vital for our society. The growing risk of most of the risks which are systemic, like pandemics, cyber threats, climate related disasters, hybrid and geopolitical warfare, and also the resilience challenges on top of critical infrastructure and critical entities addressed by the two projects, Atlantis and Sunrise. As in terms of objectives, of course, the alignment with the resilience strategy, considering also the two directives, quite new directives, CR and NIS2, addressing systemic risk, vulnerability, and dependencies among critical systems, looking at two different key findings, scenario-based planning for cascading risk, and the data augmented and artificial intelligence-based decision support system for improving situation awareness and decision making. On top of that, we move to identify such common findings. So most of them probably are already described in the previous presentation and presented in the previous presentation, but most of them are already known by all of us. Collaboration across different organizations, sectors, and countries is, of course, one of the key points that we have to take into account. Also, the harmonization of standards and the information sharing of real-time data have to be improved, and it is fundamentally vital for us. And having an improvement also the crisis preparation and crisis preparedness using a scenario-based exercises. That's the common funding. Going towards the focus area of Atlantis, we can consider also cross-border collaboration one more time to hybrid threat resilience, mitigation and management, and also real-time risk management using data augmented artificial intelligence enabling decision support systems. but also with the focus on some specific technologies which are in Atlantis based on GNSS and Copernicus space technologies for having an overall European and enhancing CEI security strategies. Regarding the focusing area of Sunrise, resilience and interdependency assessments, also in operational and temporary conditions like those related to the pandemic, multi-entity risk management, threat multipliers and impact of non-pharmaceutical interventions, and of course the usage of the real-time data gathering and collaboration. It's quite common also for Atlantis. Key challenges which has been identified. Actually, we have identified 3 different areas of challenges. Organizational funding challenges which are related to the reluctance of to share sensitive and relevant data from critical infrastructure operators, critical infrastructure authorities, due to the privacy concerns, of course. The complexity of critical infrastructure interdependencies and related strategies, which include authorities, operators, and policymakers, of course, and the amount of different standards and priority which are has been set up for different sectors and different countries, which have to be, of course, to normalize. From the technical perspective, the technological perspective, of course, the integration of legacy systems in the current with the current modern technologies, the adoption of adaptive real-time tools for such evolving threat landscapes, and the try to balance which are the needs of long-term resilience with the short-term operational needs, which most of the case are the high priority for critical infrastructure operators. In terms of policy-related challenges, of course, there is a delay in the adoption of the directives to the national level. This is quite obvious. It was also identified in the previous slides and the previous presentation. But also there is a need of capacity building and the implementation of consistent implementation of such capability buildings across the member states. Going ahead, this is a very quick summary of the recommendation that we have set up, identify and describe it within our policy brief. I don't want to go through in detail, but just to recap that we have 3 different levels of actions and areas. One is in terms of, as I said, strategic actions, so the harmonization of the EU-wide policies for the critical infrastructure protection and critical infrastructure resilience, to foster the cross-sector and cross-border collaboration, and also to integrate scenario-based planning into the current ECSCI strategies. From the technical perspective, the adoption of data augmented artificial intelligence enabler DSS for risk prediction, for risk management, for risk reduction, and the usage of improved threat detection systems for against the cyber-physical human threats, and the upgrade of current systems in the CIs to be much more adaptive, much more interoperable. Policy and governments trying to accelerate enforcing the adoption of critical infrastructure, the CR and NIS2 directives, using the real-time data sharing for a proper informative privacy safeguard, and to conduct training and preparedness exercise in a joint way across member states. I would like to go quick. This is a list of the 2 different areas which have been identified, the scenario-based planning and the augmented AI-based decision support systems. We have in total 17 different recommendations. So you can see here the list of the specific recommendation in short term, medium term, and long term. There is a typo, sorry. I would like to thank all those authors which have proactively and effectively contributed to such a policy brief. Special thanks also for the advisory board, Atlantis advisory board, and the Sunrise external expert groups, R2 and the DAYS, which have provided an effective proofreading and peer review of our document with a lot of comments and feedback. And just to conclude, this is a list of the links where you can find, of course, in the Atlantis website and the Sunrise website, news on such. You can find it just here on the the policy brief, and in a few hours there will be also a LinkedIn post with the 2 projects where you can download directly the policy brief. In the next few days, we will publish a press release. Thanks again for your attention. That's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Gabriele. So I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah.
If not, we can move on to the next presentation. We will hear from Thomas, who will present the standardization and policy development work carried out within the ATLANTIS project.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can make it
Okay.
full screen. Yes, perfect.
Okay, great, excellent. Thank you, Gabriele, and thank you, Mariana. Today, right now, I'm going to present the policy development work within the ATLANTIS project. Just a short introduction for those of you who don't know me. I work for Resilience, the design office of Vinci Group, focusing on climate change adaptation, and I serve for now more than half a year as policy manager of the ATLANTIS project. Today I will introduce all the work that has been conducted within the ATLANTIS project and where we intend to end up, right? Okay, so the ATLANTIS project is based, the ATLANTIS policy work is based on 2 standardization and policy making goals. The first one is to implement the European Union security strategy. And the second one intends to launch initiative towards a more coherent and effective critical infrastructure security strategy. For those of you who are not familiar with the European Union security strategy, as you can see, many aspects are covered by the ATLANTIS activities, such as cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, cybercrime, hybrid threat, but also, of course, strengthening research and innovation. And the initiatives towards a more coherent and effective critical infrastructure security strategy are based on this. Here is basically the roadmap for the policy activities to ensure the effectiveness and impact of the ATLANTIS solution from an SPM standpoint. So to be a bit more specific, like alignment with current ongoing standards and policy developments, operational alignment with current development in public authorities and critical infrastructure, public-private crisis management governance systems and processes, operational and innovation impact relevance to address gaps and shortcomings. So it's like a bridge based on the previous presentations that you heard earlier this morning. And of course, Second part is to contribute to informing and shaping the ongoing EU-level efforts to improve policies addressing the challenges of today and tomorrow within the scope of Atlantis, through foresight, standards and policy working groups, disseminations and training. And our roadmap to reach this goal is based on three main principles. First is to engage with SPM ecosystem in a bi-directional direction. Specifically, what it means is that understanding the needs and inputs from the SPM community to inform Atlantis development. So that's basically the philosophy of this workshop, in a way, communicating Atlantis findings and sharing lessons. The second principle is to leverage existing capabilities within the consortium. The Atlantis project has many stakeholders, like around 37, on current presence in working groups and task force, and of course also expertise. The advisory board that Gabriele already mentioned, their expertise is highly valuable for our work on this field, and the ECSCI and other affiliations, basically also this event. And of course, creating synergies. So basically that also a transition based on Gabriele's presentation, because we believe that we can share some valuable expertise on technicality and policy, but also across countries at EU levels, and work packages and tasks through training and dissemination. So here is a short summary about what I'm going to present now. It's divided in three parts. First, where do we come from, so to speak? The timeline, to have a brief overview of the whole policy work, the policies activities implemented since June 2024, and the next step. We identified three political impact areas to cover through the Atlantis activities. The first is information sharing and management for collaborative risk management decision-making in the critical infrastructure operational ecosystem. The second part is, the second PIA is more focused on space technology to announce large-scale decision support system. And the last PIA is covering a wide range of topics, because it focuses on the integration of traditional cyber, natural hazard security standards, and policy agendas, strategies, tools, and instruments. So here is a short overview of the timeline. I'll not go into details, but what you need to know is from May 2024 to October, there were very important milestones, like the midterm review that, and one of the conclusions is that much more policy scrutiny was required. Very few weeks later, we launched the Atlantis Policy Task Force, and a little while later, we created the first synergies, specifically with renowned EU-funded projects like EU-IPNET, Sunrise, but Gabriele already mentioned it, Sunrise, EU-CIP, and I will go a bit more into detail afterwards to the news project. We had this our plenary sessions in October to gather the key achievements, and we started the policy briefs that really exposed. And then we participate in international events focusing on policy. Here we are, the SPM workshop. Then the policy task force will terminate its working group sessions around early March to focus on policy briefs. Then the last part of the whole policy-related activities in the ATLANTIS project will be in this part of the year, from May to September, because we intend to finish all the policy briefs, disseminate, and discuss it during a standalone ATLANTIS policy event in Brussels, right before the final event in Brussels that will take place in September. Okay, so let's move on. So in terms of policy activities, we had key milestones. As I said, we launched the policy task force. We created 2 working groups covering the first working group covers PIA1 and PIA3, because you know the topics intertwine in some ways. And we have the second working groups focusing more on space technologies. We had synergies with EU-funded projects. I don't think this is very useful for you to go more into detail. I already mentioned it, but so far the cooperation is highly valuable. And I'd like to summarize the main achievements of the policy task force so far. So we had a very productive session with the help of the project coordinator of EU-CIP, Mr. Matila, focusing on cyber hybrid physical threats against European critical infrastructure and countermeasures in the context of integrated security. By the end of this session, we had 2 policy recommendations and 2 identified policy briefs. We had another session with the help of Paula Sameno from SATCEN, you know, the European Union Satellite Center, on the topic integration of Earth observation data for improved decision-making in European critical infrastructure. Then again, it's been very productive because we had 3 policy recommendations and 1 identified policy brief. And we had another session with the help of my colleague, Dr. Mario Alsayar, on the role of space technologies in cybersecurity for European critical infrastructure decision-making. Here again, 7 policy recommendations and 1 identified policy brief. And we had another working group session with the help of John Soldatos, who is an AI expert who already intervened in this workshop on the role of AI and big data analytics in information management. 6 policy recommendations and 1 identified policy brief. So here, if we summarize it, we identified these policy, potential policy briefs. We intend to have 2 or 3 more, and then we will pick up the most relevant for to elaborate in the next month, with the help of the advisory board members and all those who are keen to serve with their expertise. We participate in international events focusing on policy-oriented in Madrid last month, with a focus group on resilience and safety of critical infrastructure. And here we are about the next steps. In the next weeks, we will cover for working group 1 and 3. We'll cover. We intend to cover at least 3 of these topics. Specifically, the next one will be future trend and emerging challenges in integration of traditional cyber, hybrid, physical, and natural hazard security for critical infrastructure in the EU. For working groups, we will cover the next topics will be covered potentially by European Union Space Agency program utilizing global navigation satellite systems, GNSS, decision standards in EU-CIP, and there is a potential for from our partners from News Project Consortium to cover the future trends and innovations in space technologies for decision systems in European CI. Regarding the next steps, here we are. So one of the key milestones, the SPM workshop. We'll start to work collectively on policy briefs and finalize and submit all the elaborated policy briefs. And as I mentioned in the timeline, there will be the Atlantis-led policy event as a side event before the final event of the Atlantis project in Brussels. It will gather internal and external partners of the Atlantis project, and we will do this with three objectives in mind. The first one is to better understand the perspectives and priorities of policymakers to promote the Atlantis outcomes that integrate, that are likely to be integrated in policy frameworks and drive positive change in relevant fields. And last, and how do we do that? We intend to conduct roundtable discussions with policymakers and experts, academics, practitioners, to better understand the project's critical infrastructure security challenges and opportunities, and whether it fits with the broader policy landscapes, with the expected outcomes to ensure a broader audience and maximize the impact on policy discussions. And as I said, mobilize all the expertise in and out the Atlantis project. That's my last point. If some of you are keen to join Policy Task Force based on the topics that I mentioned, you're free to join. Or if you need just more specific information about the Atlantis standardization and policy development work, feel free to reach out. I'll be glad to answer all your potential questions. Yeah, and that's all on my side.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Are there any questions?
Right on time.
Yes, exactly. We have 2 minutes for questions. There is something in the chat, Thomas. At which stage of the project you started doing these activities, policy recommendation, policy briefs, etc.?
Which stage we started? I mean, it was right after the policy task force. I mean, policy recommendations. It's something that we elaborated even after the first working group session. But for to write properly, like policy briefs, as I said in the timeline, we'll start it in March after validations of the Atlantis top management.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So if there are no other questions, we can move on to the next presentation. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we move on now to the Sunrise project, to some insights, some policy insights from the Sunrise project. The next presentation will be delivered from Alosa Passage. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see your screen. If you can make it,
so it's working fine. So wait a moment, just share. You can see my screen, right?
Not now.
Not now.
We
okay.
saw it for like 5 seconds. Okay, we can see it now, but
now
it's not
okay.
full screen. If
yes,
you can make
now it should be okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Yes, it is full screen. Is it?
No, it's not.
Not? Oh, okay, so let me then stop sharing and then try again. Share entire screen. Okay. So it should be now. Yeah.
Yes.
Better.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes.
So thank you for the invitation. It's a long title, so but it's basically fitting into this. It's very much linked with previous presentations. So you saw from Gabriela, you saw that we are doing some work together with ATLANTIS project. There is intersection and in some policy work, but I will also present what we do in Sunrise in general about the policies, EU policies, and how is this linked with the work that is targeting resilience of critical infrastructures in conditions such as pandemics, for example. These are dynamic changes of these operational conditions. So this is outline of my presentation, and first of all, let me present a project at a glance. So very briefly, we are now entering the third year of the project. It is quite a big project with 42 partners, many users, and different objectives that you can also see on the website. As I said, we have 18 pilots, which is quite impressive. We have half of our partners are end users, and we have also many sectors represented. So it is very challenging, also because it involves public authorities in the project. The main pillars of the project, we like to say we have 3 pillars: collaboration, strategy, and technology. But these 3 pillars are somehow spread over the different phases of resilience cycle. So we are treating for example, risk assessment and also strategy before incident happens. And then we are also having activities and tools which are related to the period when incident already happened. So during this duration of incident, and when I say incident, I mean any hazard. It could be, in our case, pandemics, but could be also a multi-threat approach when there is a cyber attack during pandemics, for example. Let me put this very simplified slide. So this is very briefly just give you impression what we do in Sunrise. So this is typical resilience curve. When something happens, incident or hazard, there is a service degradation of critical infrastructures. There is a loss, economic loss, but also could be human loss and other type of losses. And all of this is happening in a period which I call during. And then we have restoration, and after the hazard or incident is addressed, we have some stabilization period. So what happens during these temporary operational conditions like pandemics or any other is that we could have threat multipliers, we could have, as I said, cyber attacks, we could have another incident of different kind happening. And we also have cascading effects where what happens in one critical infrastructure is impacting making bigger impact because of something that happens in supply chain or in some critical infrastructure where everybody has dependency on. And another particularity in Sunrise is that we also have what we call non-pharmaceutical interventions, such as lockdowns, such as geographical movement constraints, which are also impacting the work and availability of critical infrastructures. So we have all these different kinds of scenarios with multipliers, with cascading effects, and with interventions which are coming from the central government or regional government, like non-pharmaceutical intervention, that are all making an impact. And this is what we called scenario-based planning. So what we wanted to do is to start with kind of lessons learned from the pandemics, and then to find simulations of different scenarios. In the first set of workshops, we had like 12 or more workshops already with end users, and we will have more. So at the first set of workshops, we had very frequently, we've heard words like what was needed was adaptation, reconfiguration. The collaboration was not optimal. We had also examples of changes that they had to do in supply chain or patterns or protocols. The critical infrastructure operators adopted the new technologies. We all actually adopted new technologies very quickly without proper assessment. So if I have to summarize the three conclusions from all these dozens of conclusions that lessons learned that we collected from the critical infrastructure operators, I would say that there is one which is a human risk factor related to the lack of essential employees, absenteeism, availability, but also how they were affected physically and mentally. So all of this is kind of risk that is normally not taken into account in any scenario related to resilience of critical infrastructure. This was novelty, novelty in the sense that it was for risk assessment previously done in critical infrastructure. This was something new to take into account. Then the normal maintenance and supports was destabilized. For example, we had the example of the water plant where the technicians were not able to come because they were in different region in a country that had restriction between different provinces. Then the change of priority. This is also something that happened from one week to another, and sometimes was coming from the national or regional or some other type of strategy where there was certainly a lot of a try and error kind of measures. Okay. What we focus on in the project is examples and where we can improve observation and we can improve orientation in this type of loops. There is a loop called Boyd loop or observe, orient, decide, act, and it's focusing on better contextualization and making sense of all the data. So we realized in Sunrise, but even before Sunrise, that there is a lot of data which is not used in decision support. Sometimes this is a real-time data internally from, for example, in cybersecurity, it's quite common to use real-time data from the security event and information manager, but there are also data sensing from the Internet of Things, etc. So there is a lot of real-time data. There is a lot of external data that is not being shared. And this external data is about different aspects. It could be also about absenteeism, for example, but could be also about the trust in certain elements, other risk indicators. So what we also needed to do is, beside this outside-in sensory information, which is basically about real data, about external data, we also worked with inside-out changes of operational conditions. So we did kind of survey what are the most important operational conditions that changed during pandemics, and then we tried to play with different configuration and different scenarios. Example here on the right side is of cyber risk as a threat multiplier, where we have increase of digital technology, remote working, and it's changing also the patterns of normal behavior, how do people connect, when they connect, and how they work. Another thing is the adaptations of the fly of access control. We had this also experienced, all of us, during pandemics, and we have one specific tool which is dealing with the access control, physical access control. So these are some of the project activities and conclusions and solutions that we have in the project are besides scenarios that, as I said, that address these keywords like adaptivity, collaboration, absenteeism. Besides these scenarios, we have four big tools, which are key exploitable results, which is a risk-based access control tool for physical access, remote physical infrastructure inspection with drones. Then we have increased cyber physical resilience with a combination of tools, doing risk assessment based on this freshly arrived data, external and real-time data. And finally, resource and demand prediction tool, which is based on artificial intelligence and, again, availability of different sets of data, whether in real time or whether shared through the collaboration channels. Now a little bit about policy task force. So the way we understand the interaction with policy in a project, and this is not only about Sunrise, this is generally how we understand the interaction with European projects, is that it is in both directions. So the European project should serve to validate assumptions which are implicitly, explicitly somehow in the existing policies. So we have, for example, now we've heard in first presentation from ENSER that we have now European directives, NIS2 directive and SER directive, which have probably they have a lot of assumptions, and this is why the implementation or guidelines need to be driven. And NISA, for example, did guidelines for NIS2, and ENSER is hoping to do it for SER, different type of best practice guidelines in order to help with the implementation. And the European projects somehow could also serve as a way to validate some of these assumptions that are in the existing policy. And in the other way, the European projects, and in particular Sunrise, is giving feedback to for the future policies by identifying gaps, by let's say looking what is the feeling at the operational level, what are the changes of conditions, what are the things that should or could be improved in the future policies. So this is a two-way relationships, and the way we did it is we have this policy task force, but we also did a number of meetings with other projects, but also without other projects. We had a regular regular task force meeting where we did kind of prioritization of findings, a prioritization of recommendations. We came with the list of top 10 recommendations, and from this list of top 10 we jointly assessed with ATLANTIS 2 of these recommendations, which were in policy papers presented a few minutes ago by Gabriele. So the way that we came to these topics was that, as I said, that from our priorities, these were quite highly ranked among Sunrise participants, these two topics that I will come back right now after this slide. But these were also highly ranked by ATLANTIS participants, and this was intersection between our work and ATLANTIS work. As I said, all these 10 recommendations that we have on our to-do list are linked to operational level constraints and pilots and working on strategy for pandemics and for temporary conditions. So all this can be traced back to some work in Sunrise. We are planning to work further on this, but let me briefly summarize once again what is in a position paper, policy brief that we published today with ATLANTIS. So the two findings, the two main topics are scenario-based planning and new data sources for decision making. The scenario-based planning in Sunrise is also having a tool which is doing a simulation of cascading effects and what-if analysis. So, for example, just to give you an example, we did not did only the simulation with pandemic conditions, but we invented a kind of new imaginary hypothetical pandemic with different conditions where the virus is attacking different kind of population and what effects of this would be. And then we can also simulate what would effect be of a different type of non-pharmaceutical interventions, what the different risks will be in different critical infrastructures, and what resources could be or should be shared between different critical infrastructures. So all of this could be included in scenario-based planning and modeling of these situations. The second part is about the, as I already mentioned several times, inclusion of new data sources. The most of the critical infrastructures is taking decisions based on historical data. and not on real-time data, which is now widely available. Many critical infrastructure operators have sensors, Internet of Things. They have also the cyber sensors that can tell them about cyber events. So the integration of these, but also external data, which is shared through collaboration channels, is changing the way we perceive threats, is changing probabilities that threats will materialize, but it could also change the way that we deal with impact. So when we do risk assessment, we of course have also to adjust the impact, and this impact is very frequently linked to the national or regional policies, priorities, etc. So this is another type of data. In this case, is not real time, but is, as I said, it is sometimes trial and error from the government entities, and it has to be also taken into account for the decision making. One example of tools, I mentioned that we have 4 tools. One example of tools that is using different sets of data, and that is also using artificial intelligence, is demand prediction and management. So in this kind of tool, we can forecast what is in real time, what is needed, which type of resources are needed, and which will be demand, for example, of energy or water or healthcare, etc. Okay, the other issues I mentioned that the focus in the policy brief that is published today is on 2 issues, but we have in our task tray, we have several other issues that we would like to address during the next year. For example, to focus on dynamic conditions for each critical infrastructures. There are some of these dynamic conditions which are generic, and this could be, for example, absenteeism, or because the virus is probably attacking the most of critical or all of the critical infrastructure workforce in the same way. But some of these conditions could be applicable only to specific sectors or specific operators. So the more we would like to see more work also in the policy area on what are the generic versus specific differences, and what is applicable. Then in the phase which I call during phase, which is when the hazard happens or incident happens. So we would like to look at the broader definition of resilience, and also so not only as a bounce back, but also what to do when incident is happening. This is of course depending on the type of hazard. Sometimes there is enough time to react quickly and to do something during the phase. Sometimes there is no time. There is a sudden hazard that is happening, but also the multi threat situation where there is some multiple hazards happen at the same time should be investigated. Finally, the focus on cross feature of the policies. This is already addressed in previous policies, integration and interoperability. It is also addressed at different levels, so strategic level, tactical level, and operational level. But we are doing also let's say the interaction of all these levels, strategic, tactical, and operational, with existing risk management processes, because the frameworks are different in different countries at different levels. What is frequently done at operational level is short-term risk assessment, which is technical risk assessment, and not linked to the tactical or strategic levels. Finally, there is one just minor comment, which is which was said at one of our workshops. In the case of pandemics, when the life is in threat, is the compliance, 100% compliance with NIS2 or SER, more important than saving human lives? So this is a kind of thought that was open for discussion. Conclusions. In Sunrise, we have several phases which could be summarized in model, share, control, predict, or detect. We had identified lessons learned from COVID-19, such as a need for adaptivity or better collaboration, both horizontal and vertical, and also need to use real-time as well as external data to improve monitoring and to improve detection of risk indicators of probability, detection of changes of probability, detection of changes of impact, etc. What we do is activities related to threat multipliers. An example is cyber attack during pandemics or during natural disaster, or fraudulent information, phishing, etc., and multi-hazard scenarios. There are a number of risk factors, such as human risk factors, supply chain disruptions, supply chain risk factors, cyber physical risk factors, etc. Dependencies at cross level, across EU, this is a holy grail. This is as far as I can remember research work in critical infrastructure of more than 25 years. This is already happening, and it will never be finished, because this is something that is looking like impossible task to solve. But it can be always improved, and I see already that there are many improvements in collaboration, cross-sector collaboration, and also cross-EU collaboration. Continuous resilience management. This is something that is following the trend on continuous risk management, where we have continuous ingestion and aggregation of data, of risk indicators, of resilience indicators. As I said, real-time data is also enabling real-time monitoring of attack vectors, of derived risks, but also is enabling better reasoning thanks to artificial intelligence, reasoning with uncertain or missing data, and also the better anomaly detection, another type of indicators which have different level of probability. From lessons learned, we would like to go to policy inputs, and we have many things to say. I think in our projects there are a lot of partners with a lot of lessons, and some of these are related for this outside-in sensing or observation, but others are related to inside-out decision making and inside-out contextualization of the critical infrastructure operational conditions. We should consider technology, people, and processes. Risk factors are and risk indicators are in all of these at operational level, at tactical level, and also strategic level. And in these temporary operational conditions, we need also to consider threat multipliers, and that sometimes hazards do not happen once at a time. This is all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Are there any questions? If not, and if you come up with a question later, again, feel free to put it in the chat, and we can answer it later. So we can move on to our next speaker, Karin Bresmet from SINTEF, who will speak about improved guidance for the cybersecurity of medical devices. Karin,
right.
please feel free to share your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to this WebEx. I'm going to speak a little bit about what we in the Nemesis project do to improve the existing guidance for cybersecurity of medical devices for those who need to be compliant with the 2 European regulations. All right, so the Nemesis project is a Horizon Europe project, of course, like all the others here. We are working on cybersecurity of connected medical devices. We are 12 partners coordinated by us, SINTEF, We are about to close our second year now and move into our final year. And our ambition is to investigate proportionate cybersecurity risk benefit schemes. That means that we need to balance the need for cybersecurity with the benefit of the patients who are actually using the connected medical devices for health purposes. And we are going to deliver tools and toolboxes for 3 different types of stakeholder groups, which are involved in the connected medical devices life cycles. That's the manufacturers of those devices. It's the integrators who integrate the devices into the healthcare environments, and it's the ones who actually operate them, usually hospitals and other healthcare providers. And we are also aiming to review relevant guidelines, which is what I will speak a little bit about today, and provide recommendations for their improvement. So to derive relevant results and to validate and demonstrate them, we have 4 very interesting case studies. It's a home dialysis scenario where we use an existing bioimpedance sensor patch delivered by a Norwegian company. We are also looking at a wearable device from PD Neurotechnology, a British company with the offices in Greece as well. We are looking at IVD medical devices for hospital point of care testing, which is currently operating at an Italian hospital. And the 4th one is the use of mobile applications in hospitals and home environments. And we are very keen on collaborating with all different types of stakeholders from the healthcare domain and others as well who may be interested. So don't hesitate to contact me if you think that anything of this sounds interesting. All right, so a little bit more about our stakeholders and the toolboxes and tools that we will deliver. We are considering the whole medical device life cycle. As you can see on the right in these pictures, it's from the design of the devices, moving into the integration and deployment of the devices, and also the usage of devices in connected scenarios. And therefore, we have these 3 stakeholder groups, which are concerned about the manufacturing, the integration, and the operation of the devices. And we see that there are cybersecurity risks in every phase of this life cycle. We have it because it's inherent when we have a connected medical device. There also follows threats with this. But there are specific risks that also appear when you connect these devices into an existing environment, and there are other risks that appear when you actually use them. So our toolboxes, which contains a number of different tools, aim to address this complete life cycle. And the 4 case studies that we have are covering all of these 3 stakeholder groups, and we will show how our tools help to address cybersecurity here. And here in this picture, as you can see in the middle, it's something called the MDCG on the table here, which is something with the guidance that the 3 stakeholder groups use when they try to address cybersecurity in the products that they are designing, manufacturing, integrating, or using. So a little bit about the applicable regulation in Europe. There are 2 regulations actually. First, it's the EU Medical Device Regulation, which covers all products that are released on the European market. It applies to all types of medical devices that will come into direct contact with humans, and we usually say that it covers everything. So it's bandages and splints to implant, and also things like hospital beds. So that's why everything here. And in addition, there is this in vitro device regulation, which covers medical devices that perform so-called in vitro functions, which is kind of processing outside the human body. So this regulation applies to a huge list of diagnostic products, but common for most of them is that they take something from the human body and analyze it outside the body. So it's typically different types of tests, pregnancy tests, blood tests, and so on. And both of these regulations, they entered into force in 2017. But for both of them, there has been a transition period before the requirements in them were fully implemented in Europe. So as you all know, regulations are often quite hard to interpret and to implement. And there is therefore this guidance document, which is released by the Medical Device Coordination Group, which is called the MDCG Guidelines from 2019, which intends to assist practitioners on how to comply with these two regulations. So when we applied for funding for the Nemesis project, the call text specifically asked for feedback on these guidelines. So they wanted all the funded projects to identify representative case studies and to evaluate the applicability of this guidance document and also to make recommendations on it. So this is the very reason this is a concrete task in our project. And to do that, we decided to join forces with the other projects that were also funded under the same call. So here you see 4 of our sibling projects. I think some of these may be familiar to some of you. It's us, Nemesis, and it's Septon, it's Salcomed, it's Entrust, and it's also MedSecurance. So we are working together on this specific task to provide recommendations on how to improve the guidance document. There is also a 6th project, which is also funded under the same call, but it started a little bit later. So therefore, they haven't contributed to this first part of our joint collaboration. And we are also aiming to write a policy brief with our recommendations, but as a starting point, we decided to write an academic paper, which we then could use to cite and refer to in our policy brief. So this summer, we published a paper, A Way Forward for the MDCG 2019 Medical Device Security Guidance. And I think there are actually 22 authors of this paper. And then we even had to limit the number of authors, but the reason for that is because 5 projects collaborated to write it up. So it contains our joint feedback on the guidelines document. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of the recommendations that we gave in this paper. It's not all of them, but just some examples. So, for example, the first thing that we recommend is that the guidance document link together cybersecurity risks, patient safety, and privacy risks in a better way. And this recommendations comes from the Nemesis project, the Salcomed project, and MedSecurance as well. Because we have realized that it's not clear how this different cybersecurity techniques and privacy measures that companies implement in their projects relate to the patient safety, and it's therefore a need to consider these relationships a little bit more closely in the document to help, for example, manufacturers to better understand the relationship between cybersecurity and potential patient harms. Another example of a recommendation that we have provided is that the guidance document should be better on actually guiding on what cybersecurity controls to use, because we realized that it's not that easy to identify what's appropriate for different types of medical devices. So there should be a reference to relevant security risk management standards in the guidance documents, we believed, for example, such as ISO 27002, which contains controls. And we've also seen that it's a need to better balance between different types of patient risk, because there can be conflicting needs between privacy requirements, between cybersecurity, and between the medical needs of the product itself. So the guidance document doesn't help, for example, manufacturers to do this kind of balancing. Further on, we quickly realized, together with the MedSecurance project, that it's definitely a need to keep this guidance document current and to update it periodically, because standards evolve and also state-of-the-art evolves. And they also need to keep pace with the evolutions of the regulations. So the guidance documents should follow that. And another one, it's not clear, the guidance document, it's not clear what things apply to the different stages of the life cycle of the medical device. Because there may be different priorities, for example, different needs of cybersecurity in different stages of the life cycle of the device. All right, so to conclude, we believe that the collaboration with our sibling projects has been a great success. We are stronger together when we try to influence EU policies. In this first paper, we have suggested 12 concrete recommendations towards improving the guidance. And there are considerable consensus across these 5 projects in the recommendations that we have made. All projects are now halfway, a little bit more than halfway. We are planning to write up more papers, especially now when we have started to get results from the validations. We may want to update our recommendations based on that. And like I said, we are planning policy briefs as well. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Karin and Nemesis? If not, we can move on to the next presentation. Let's welcome Dr. Sofia Tsegeridou from the company Intrasoft, who will discuss the standardization and policy development work within the IRIS-Lab initiative. Sofia, feel free to share your screen.
Yes,
good morning,
everybody. Good afternoon, that is. I'm trying to open my camera, but I have an issue with my camera. Sorry about that. I'll share my screen. I hope you can see it.
Not yet. I think it's coming. Let's see. Yeah, we can see it now, but it's not full screen.
Okay. Now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hello to everybody. My name is Sofia Tsegeridou. I'm a Senior Research and Innovation Manager at the net company Intrasoft and its Research and Innovation Development Department. I will be presenting work that has been implemented in terms of standardization as well as primarily compliance to existing policies as they were actually being developed during the course of the IRIS project that has been an H2020 EC funded project that has finished in August. And then I will very briefly present some policy work that we are now initiating and conducting in the course of the Skilla project, which is an Horizon Europe project that started this year. Okay, very briefly, what has been IRIS? IRIS has been a project that has focused on developing a collaborative CERT platform to combat cyber threats in both IoT and AI-driven systems. Because within the context of smart cities that are actually infrastructures that are equipped with quite an extensive IoT and AI-enabled environment, novel and complex threats are introduced due to that fact. And there has been, in any case, found that these architectures within smart cities are not very well understood by security practitioners and certain authorities. This was the case when at least the project started. So the aim was actually to develop such a platform to allow further from detection, setting, responding, and recovering from cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities of IoT and AI-driven systems, the collaboration with online means among CERT authorities and critical infrastructure operators. So the focus primarily has been on enhancing the cyber resilience in smart cities context, and our pilots actually focused in transport, mobility, and energy sectors. So what has been developed within IRIS, an all-in-one integrated and distributed ecosystem that has a loosely coupled architecture and allows automated diverse vulnerabilities and threats, as well as attack detection on such types of infrastructure that I mentioned. So these are cross-critical infrastructure, critical entities sectors, because smart cities embody different types of critical infrastructure sectors. Then it enables semi-automated, secure, and timely cyber threat intelligence and incident information sharing and reporting among only the need-to-know stakeholders, that is, the operators of essential services and CERT authorities. It further enables enhanced and timely cyber situational awareness and online collaboration among these stakeholders in order to manage and respond to a detected threat or incident. And then closing the loop, as I said, is the definition of response policies and their execution in a semi-automated manner. Of course, what is very important is these areas that also comply with policies, and what I will be presenting is how IRIS actually has been monitoring and complied with the relevant directives and policies that came into place or have been defined. This is briefly the architecture of the IRIS ecosystem, quite a distributed one. We have developed finally its results in sustainable so-called service bundles. What you see here is first the automated threat and attack detection service bundle with different such detection tools that are deployed on the smart city infrastructure. And we had the different suites for such types of threat and attack detection tools and vulnerability assessment ones. Then it is the EME, as we call it, service bundle, enhanced military service ecosystem service bundle, distributed one, because instances of it are operated by different stakeholders, critical infrastructure operators, and CERT authorities, and it groups together threat intelligence capabilities, information sharing in a timely manner, workflows management and orchestration with interoperable data exchange interfaces, customized SIEM dashboards, trust and sharing groups and governance, as well as online collaboration and allowing cross-border interactions among the stakeholders that deploy such instances of the MS service bundle. Of course, we had the virtual cyber service bundle for the training of the stakeholders, and the add-on services service bundle catering for accountability and traceability and auditing of stored and accessed data. So these service bundles that you see here, and they have different types of licensing models. I'm just presenting this because it will make it better to understand then how we comply with the different policies and directives. you will see that for the enhanced mail-service ecosystem, what we followed and what is also complying with the open source policy and open science policies of the European Commission is that we open source this solution under the European Union Public License 1.2. So we capitalize primarily, as I said, on open source components, and we follow the open source software model. MailCert, MISP, and SAFU. Now, how would we adopt and use standards? We have primarily used the STIX version 2.1 for CTI, cyber threat intelligence information sharing, in a cross-domain and cross-sector manner, and converted also the mapping services from and to MISP objects, supporting that is MISP standards as well, and for representing in an interoperable manner the response policies that are managed by the platform. We have adopted the OSIS Open Cacao playbooks to define, as I said, the effective incident response procedures for common threats. So these were the standards that we adopted and finally concluded, and we'll try now that it is ended, because it was happening at the last period of the project, that some recommendations with respect to Cacao playbooks can be fed back to the OSIS Open Working Group on Cacao. I will not say very much here. This is what we adopted from STIX 2.1. It is the data model for the instant reports that are supported within the IRIS platform, and of course the Cacao playbooks and these elements of the Cacao playbooks. We have also defined within IRIS an open API we adopted an open API approach and defined API schemas that are actually formatted in standardized forms, as I said, STIX 2.1 and STIX Cacao. And this, of course, in order to allow the interaction with the interoperable interaction among the different instances of the IRIS and particularly the EMA platform, but also beyond that, when we actually in a loosely coupled manner, integrate and interoperate as a sustainable service with other attack detection, vulnerability assessment, etc. tools that may be chosen by the critical infrastructure operators to be deployed on their infrastructures, further from the ones that IRIS, of course, developed. So with respect to contribution standardization, IRIS, as I said, adopted STIX and Cacao, and we have learned some, we have assessed some extensions with respect to the OSIS Cacao, that this is a work in progress, even beyond the project end, to feed back to the OSIS working group. Now, with respect to policies and directives, as I said, when the project started, it has been quite some years ago. So primarily, the NIS2 directive was in place then, or was in definition, and then the CERT directive emerged, and further from that, CRA, as well as the Cyber Solidarity Act. So we have kept monitoring the policy and the regulations landscape, and tried from an implementation point of view to see how we can comply with that, and by that, in order to have a result that will be adopted by our target stakeholders, because we support a level of compliance and have implemented fundamental requirements from the respective policies and directives. So with respect to NIS2 directive, it defines and addresses a wider range of critical infrastructure sectors, and actually obliges authorities to report incidents and manage cybersecurity risks and collaborate among the different diverse stakeholders within the cybersecurity domain, as well as share information. So we have already developed such types of functionalities within the IRIS platform. Of course, the CERT directive again addresses obligation to report incidents and define response procedures. Not only, of course, cybersecurity, but also for physical types of attacks. We've implemented the cyber versions of that to ensure, of course, also with the response procedures and the semi-automated response enforcement, the business continuity of the critical infrastructure. As I said, because we developed quite a distributed ecosystem and interoperable interfaces to share in a secure manner information, either cyber threat intelligence or even incidents types of information among different stakeholders, also in a cross-border manner. You see here at a very high level how the different stakeholders can actually collaborate and share information, even if this means that they may have any MISP instance installed, or they may have a MLCertis version 2 instance due to the interoperable type of interfaces that we have developed and the mapping services to MISP. This is possible. So this actually demonstrates how information sharing can be done across stakeholders, even in a cross-border manner. Indeed, finally, we concluded within the policy task that we also had within IRIS, that IRIS offers valuable suggestions showcasing what end-to-end integrated models are possible to develop or adapt for the key provision areas that are highlighted here with respect to the NIS2 directive. Of course, as I mentioned, CRA came into play, as well as the Cyber Solidarity Act, actually near the end of the project. So with respect to CRA, even before we had proposed and adopted a DevSecOps approach, including, of course, security testing before the final release of the project, the final release of the platform, was operationally used to ensure cybersecurity resilience of its software. And this is something that, of course, it is made in Europe by European partners and partnerships, so it further boosts autonomy and sovereignty within the European cybersecurity market. And with respect to the Cyber Solidarity Act, we do offer a variety of cyber threat detection tools that interoperate, of course, with our main enhanced MLCertis ecosystem instances. And these could be used by cross-border SOCs actually for timely sharing, detecting threats and incidents among them as Cyber Solidarity Act provisions. So the IRIS can serve as a proven baseline to demonstrate the existing challenges and the available solutions in terms of, let's say, the European Cybersecurity Alert System implementation, or the cybersecurity emergency mechanisms, or the cybersecurity incident review mechanisms that are identified within the core pillars of the Cybersecurity Act, Cyber Solidarity. And with respect to CRA compliance, as I said, you see here what we've adopted as further from a security by design approach, as a DevSecOps approach to fully test the released software and minimize the risk of any existing vulnerabilities, etc. Of course, we have been given a recommendation that we need to apply penetration testing services as well. And this is something that we included within our sustainable business model as types of services wherever the platform will be deployed, to run first penetration test suits on it to ensure advanced security. As I said, the enhanced MLCertis ecosystem part of the IRIS platform is open sourced and it's available in GitHub. And some very major key lessons learned from all the work is that indeed the alignment with EU legislation and policies is rather time consuming and requires the extra mile, and monitoring all the ongoing activities actually and interactions until consensus is reached. But it is indeed beneficial. Why? Because then it ensures sustainability of results in terms of being more easily adopted by the market and the addressed stakeholders. In addition, the monitoring of standards and relevant implementations among a diverse mix of expertise among partners for standards and adoptions and interoperability targets is also very challenging and requires still time. So we did find out that we could feed in to the Cacao or Open Cacao working group, but there was no time to do that within the course of the project because we were running quite many pilots and getting feedback. So we actually decided to leave it for later. So going now, I don't know how much time I have. I will be quick, okay? Going now to Skill Up, which is, as I said, mentioned on the Horizon Europe project, we've seen that there is quite a significant need for augmenting the cybersecurity and cyber resilience, but also in order to do that, means that we also augment and advance the cybersecurity skills of the workforce. So Skill Up actually is a project, an Horizon Europe project, that monitors the demand and the supply of skills in the European labor market. And in different, of course, it's kind of agnostic what types of skills, but by analyzing what are the shortages, it is very evident that cybersecurity skills are one of the high demanding areas. So very briefly, the project aims to open source a skill demand and supply identification, analysis, and prediction hub for citizens, enterprises, academia, and even policymakers. It aims to develop a skills management, skills identification platform at a regional level, even at a sector, as well as a temporal level, goals and monitor the European labor market and propose strategies, curricular development, and policies. Based on the presentation that actually the European Commission policy offer from DG Employment has made, it is evident that there is a skill shortages is a real challenge, and skilled workforce is an enabler, even when we talk in a generic manner, but also even more so when we talk about cybersecurity resilience or security critical, even physical resilience. Indeed, they have 4 objectives: investment, skills relevance, matching skills, and attract talent within that policy area. And from the keynote speech that was given at the kickoff meeting of the project by CEDEFOP, they estimate and forecast until 2035 that there will be quite significant growth with respect to employment in the information and communication sector. This is, of course, a wide sector, but this can, there are statistics that this is the case also within the security and cybersecurity sector. So the key features of Skill Up are to identify, as I said, skills, shortages, and gaps, but also to recommend personalized skilling, upskilling, and training plans, and support enterprises in developing their human resources strategy. And as well, finding ideal countries for merging roles, retaining employees, and providing systematic skills shortages reporting across countries that can help, of course, further policy development. So further from the benefits that are brought to citizens and enterprises, which are quite generic, we have quite significant benefits aimed for policymakers to identify the blooming and fading market segments, one of which is security, of course, and to systematically report on skill shortages across countries, and then develop the plans how this can be overcome. There are 3 key modules in the Skill Up technology: the tracker, the modeler, and the intelligent agent. And it is quite a machine learning AI-based platform using also natural language processing into the analysis of competencies. Going now more narrow within the cybersecurity skills domain, we follow the policy and the work of ENISA and the respective working group. ENISA is committed to address the cybersecurity skills gap through a comprehensive systematic approach based on education. They have developed the cybersecurity education maturity assessment. You see here only one graph, there are many, to demonstrate indeed what the educational level on cybersecurity is at different countries, and you will see that this is quite not so advanced with respect to the demands in the market about such cybersecurity skills. So ENISA aims to support national authorities by developing initiatives such as the cybersecurity skills framework, and support, of course, the national authorities to define their own plans on how to implement to augment the cybersecurity skills with national plans. So we aim to interact with the ENISA on this aspect and augment the skills, enhance be able to also comply, because we have a skilled workforce, and implement the actions needed by the different policies in the cybersecurity domain as part of the policy making, policy definition, policy recommendations task within a skill lab. We organize a first workshop that is to take place the 21st of February. It's a policy meeting, shaping policies for addressing skills gaps. We aim to, of course, invite ENISA as well as others, the FOP and other stakeholders in this policy meeting, and discuss, of course, what needs to be done next to fill in the skills gaps, not only in the cybersecurity, of course, field, but this is one of the primary sectors, but also AI and other software engineering, and primarily advancing digital skills. So if anyone of you is interested to join us, he or she is more than welcome to do so. And this is all from my side. I hope I have been on time. Thank you very much. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Right on time. But of course, if there are any questions, please feel free. That was very interesting, Sophia, especially the numbers that we saw from Skill Lab. It was very
Thank you.
Interesting. If there are no questions right now, we can move on to the next speaker. That is Alexandra Krukolova, who will present the findings from the R2D2 project. We cannot hear you. Still no. You are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Yeah. Nope, we cannot hear you. Okay, we wait. We still cannot hear you. Okay, let's see. I think Sasha is here. Sasha, if you can hear us, would you mind doing your presentation now until Alexandra fixes the technical issue?
Yes, I can do it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, so we move on to Sasha's presentation, who will discuss supporting standardization activities in the area of CI resilience. So, Sasha, thank you. Please share your screen.
Yeah, I hope you can see the screen now, and
We can see it. Perfect. Yeah, full screen. We can see it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's start with a little bit of bottom-up approach. So far, we are very much on the top-down side, talking about the policies, about the other things, and let me highlight some of the activities which we had on the bottom part of the scale, which is on the side of the producing the particular standards and standardization documents. So in that sense, let me remind you, just a moment, oh, I have a problem, about the very, so to say, common and common sense fact that we cannot have any standards. We are not talking about policy documents, we are talking about standards without involving standardization organizations, be it on ISO, SEN, national standardization body level, doesn't matter. So we have to see how all this works, and maybe the examples which I'm going to show are going to help. So if we look, oops, sorry. If we look at the overall situation and the levels in the standardization, starting from the top down, international, European, national, industrial, we can, without being, so to say, critical or whatever, we can see and say that only exceptionally we have standards on national, international, or SEN level, let alone industrial level. And therefore, I was very glad to hear from Sophia about the links which her projects were actually establishing towards sub-node committees. Why? Because, as I said, with talking and involving these guys into the process, there will be no standards resulting from projects. So in the past, we have tried to involve resilience standardization topics in most of our past projects, starting as early as even earlier than you can see it on this slide. And through the projects like Integris, Smart Resilience, Zero Stress, we always try to, on one side, extend the scope of the items tackled by the standardization and the applicability of these standards expressed mainly through the TRL. In the area of resilience, which is one of the, so to say, key topics of, especially for the CR directives, we had in 2014 the standard which was talking primarily about risks in critical infrastructures, refineries, power plants, and so on. And it was promoted to a European standard in 2018. And then complemented by the standard on managing emerging technology-related risks. So far, so until 2013, the documents produced were dealing primarily with this red arrow. I'm not sure if one can see my mouse or not, but this is the so to say, the risk part of the whole story. Since the time after that, the focus was on resilience, and the Smart Resilience project yielded ISO document 31050, which was published last year, and based on this, in actually it is also 2023, at the end, a DIN document on stress testing was produced and established. So the 31050 started with the idea that we have more and more of emerging risks, and that exactly these risks are the most challenging for for the resilience. I was about to ask, the findings of Atlantis and Sunrise about the scenario-related analysis and, the open issue which we have in this area, but still. Already 31,050 started from the point that we need to produce something which is going to tell us how to enhance and actually achieve better resilience against emerging risks or emerging threats. In that sense, the document looked at unrecognized changes, innovation, new sources, modified processes, unforeseen hazards, and other things which were the basis or the background of all these emerging risks, and established principles and looked at the resilience within a sort of intelligence cycle, which was in the whole standard supported by examples, particular issues like systemic risks, influencing factors, and so on. So at the end of the day, we of course needed to put it into a context. And this context was on one side the ISO 31000 and on the other side the CE 2300 standards, giving us the basis in terms of vocabulary and techniques and so on and so forth. So the projects which we are talking about and dealing with within this group of projects, we of course to look at the practical issues, and these were tackled in the section 7 of standards, looking at capability development and particular indicators. I remind you in this work the fact that Smart Resilience Projects has developed data resilience indicators which could be used further in resilience assessment. Quantitative resilience assessment is certainly a good starting point there. So without much ado about the annexes, which, as I said, were dealing with examples and particular issues like systemic risks, knowledge management in particular within the intelligence cycle, we actually come to the final question. Now we have developed the standard before CR directive was in, and if we want how to align the concepts in the two important documents, and for this I would encourage any interested to have or get in touch with the respective technical committees of ISO, which are 262 and 292. They were all combined during the standard introduction, the so-called joint working group 1. So one of the particular issues which was also raised in ISO standard is the issue of stress testing of resilience or resilience testing. And this is nothing else but defining the limit when the functionality of a system which we are looking at is within the acceptable limits. How long can we stay without water? How long can we stay without electricity? And in order to do this, the idea of this DIN document was the specification 91461 was that critical parameters on the resilience curves should be in a way defined in such a way that people know what they are talking about, that they can measure it and quantify it. And that is then put practically into a process which we at that time used Seveso directive as one starting point, and the Tiber EU directive or framework, which is defining the things in the financial area, to define the basic DIN spec framework, which is essentially saying that any stress testing should involve 3 teams: blue team, red team, and white team. Obviously, blue team trying to protect, red team trying to attack, and white team acting as a jury or as evaluator of how successful this was. So the whole procedure was neatly discussed and I would say specified in such a way that it can be applied in organizations of different sizes. And the committee is still active because the document is currently under revision, which, as I'm going to say it later, is a chance for the projects. In particular, it details we are defining the parameters, these macro indicators, as we call them, like maximum time partial recovery or maximum time of full recovery, and try to put it, what you see on the lower right part, with the data which are measured. This, for instance, is here the application of the standard in Switzerland for the recovery of electricity network in different under different scenarios, and in one of the cases where the standards has been applied. How to link all this work to the CR directive? The easiest way is, of course, to contact the still existing and active Dean Technical Committee, and I suggest that as chairperson of that committee, I can for sure help that any request finds its way towards. So to make some conclusions, as I say, from bottom-down perspective, one should look possibly also at the position paper which we have produced this year on the side of the ECSCI cluster. And there we have tried to raise some critical questions. Are the interests of the national standardization and other bodies involved in the standardization and the EU research project the same? Can they and should they find, or are they diverging in some of the cases? Then looking at that issue, which was already mentioned also partly in that what Sophia was presenting. Sorry for referring to you, Sophia, but that was the nearest to standards which we heard today. And this alignment between policies and standards is something which is very important. And with some of the previous standards, we have seen that there are real applications. We have had the best cases at the moment when the standard was mentioned in the policies. So, for instance, the standards which we have produced in Restruct and other risk-related projects were included in national risk-related regulation in many countries. And so when the people read these policies and regulation, they can read, for instance, that it is suggested to do things in that and way, using some of the recognized international standards, like instance, and then some of these standards are mentioned. So a reminder that national standardization bodies essentially do not create standards in the terms of their contents, but in the terms of their forms. And that means that they are searching for experts and people to work in this, and how to increase this work, knowing that some of this work is also bureaucratic and boring, is of course an open issue. So I will skip the issue of measuring the success of standards. We are certainly in the area of infrastructure resilience still in front of various hurdles and have a long way to go. But would mention some of the topics which we have been discussing. Future work can help us when some problem like initial to end up with scenarios and techniques and analysis which are going to close the cycle into the satisfaction of the society. And I say this, one of the approaches which can help there is, putting everything in a transparent way, and that's what we are now, for instance, doing in some of our Swiss-related efforts, analyzing what could be the response to the future extreme events like the repetition of the 2005 flood, which they in the city of Lucerne. Finally, concluding, last sentence: no standards without standardization organization. Yes. And the identified needs there is just maybe 0.5% of the roads in front of those who want to do it towards real standards. Projects like Resistant had produced something like 200 ideas, not one as I'm aware of, but let's assume that 2 ended up in one or the other way in the so-called new WIPs, which stands for the new work item proposals, which is the necessary step in standardization. Usually just half of these number is accepted, and then once when accepted, most of them finish that. But still, it leaves us with 0.5% of standards produced, and we have to talk about this and by all means avoid in the future working with something which, looking from the outside, still looks like working in silos when the research and the standardization bodies are to be mentioned. So, having said this, I would just encourage everybody to then look at what we have done in the past and take the conclusions produced out of this for that what we wanted to, or we want still to do in the future, and possibly take part in this. Thank you, Mariana. That would be all.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Before we move on to the final presentation, are there any questions? Let's see in the chat. Okay, so there are no questions.
Alyosha raised his hand, if I've seen it.
Yes, thank you, Sasha. Yes, there's a very, very simple question. In one slide, when you had the Tiber EU stress testing, I saw the red, blue, and white team. Is it specific, this standard, then for cyber resilience and or man-made threats, or is it applicable to other types of resilience?
Well, the 3 teams approach is very generic and very broadly applied. So it is nothing specific to Tiber EU, nothing specific to financial. The experience with stress testing in European policies is, I would say, very much to be analyzed, because there are good examples, bad examples. I mean, financial is probably one of the better examples. Some others like nuclear and so on were probably more challenging. But still, if we want to go further and produce something not only useful, which probably any of the stress tests is in one way or the other, but also be usable, we have to look at the situation in the ground. And in the area of CER, we have a unique chance, I would say, to implement this 3 side or 3 teams approach in a very nice way, and that could be done for sure in the process of updating the standard and possibly upgrading it also to so to say next level of the standardization process. I hope I have managed to answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Okay, I can see there are no other raised hands. So we can move on to the final presentation. Alexandra, I hope this time we can hear you.
Okay, is it okay now?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, perfect.
Let's see if you can also share your screen, if it works.
Yes, yes, let's see. Just a second.
Yep.
Okay. So, can you see the whole screen?
Yes, we can see the full screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
First of all, sorry for the technical glitch, and thank you for understanding and moving the presentation. These things occur when you least want them and when you least expect them, but nonetheless, I will try in the next minutes to show the presentation on behalf of R2D2 project. So just let me see that it moves. Can you see the next slide? Oh, okay. Thank you for inviting this project to the presentation. It was really interesting to see and to hear what all other different projects are working in this area. And my name is Alexandra Krakuleva-Mataska. Just a short introduction. I'm with the Saint Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje. Being one of the partners of R2D2 project, the acronym stands for Reliability, Resilience, and Defense Technology for the Grid. And I would use the next minutes to shed some findings from the R2D2 project in terms of legislation in power systems as critical infrastructure. So just in the beginning, I would like to give a brief introduction of our project. R2D2 is an innovation action project which is funded by the Horizon Europe program. Our project has started in October 2022. It has 17 partners, and the core objective of our project is to develop 4 products, namely C3PO, IRIS, PRECOG, and EMA. The first one is C3PO. It aims to contribute to a more systematic approach for evaluating energy system security strategies. On the other hand, IRIS suite or IRIS toolpack is aimed to increase the resilience by improved coordination between system operators on regional level, and also cooperation between TSOs and DSOs, so to improve system operations and overall security of these systems. Then we have PRECOG, which deals with setting cybersecurity framework for operational technologies and information technology. And finally, EMA, which addresses asset maintenance and management and contributes to increased reliability of the physical assets in the grid, and aims to help faster grid recovery. So these products are already developed, and our project now is in the demonstration phase. These products will be demonstrated in 4 pilot sites, namely in Greece, Portugal, Slovenia, and Serbia. And we expect that before the end of next year, our project will be completed and we'll have finished with all the activities. So the main aims or objectives of the project are to deploy these tools that I've just briefly described and use them to prevent, protect, and restore the electric power and energy systems in situations of cyber and physical threats and evolving threats and vulnerabilities that already affect the critical infrastructure. This is a rather complex task, and the objectives are set quite high, but throughout the whole project, we also dedicate time and resources into following legislative and normative developments, and try to uncover any barriers and issues related to the final deployment of our products. So if we look at the timeline of our project, we can devise three parts: project foundations, development of products phase, and deployment phase. The project foundation phase actually aims to set the environment for implementing the tools developed within our project. So that's why we needed to identify the legislation and standards for the implementation of the tools that are envisaged, that were being developed at that time. So we wanted to provide the overall ecosystem for implementation of our product and map the project tools versus legislation and standards. So to briefly say, to prepare the pilot sites for the final deployment of the products. The next phase of the project could be assumed to be development of products. And from the aspect of legislation and standardization, it is important to look into any issues related to development of the product. So our activities were focused in cooperation with technology partners, the partners who are developing the actual tools and products for our project, and to find and extract potential barriers and provide recommendation for the deployment phase. And finally, the deployment phase means that we have to deploy the tools, and in that process, we also need to identify any acts and standards that could be subject to changes. We can give recommendations from the experience gathered from the actual deployment of products, and finally summarize the lessons to be learned. So we have spread the legislation and standardization activities across the project to have a full overview of the development of products and their final implementation, and how their implementation can actually benefit the end users of the project, which are TSOs and DSOs mainly. So I will now speak for each of the phases. I will start with the project foundation phase and tackle the methodology and the outcomes. Within the start of the project, we wanted to have a broader perspective of legislation and standards related to implementation of the products. So we started by analyzing of the, let's say, strategic documents, policy frameworks, which set the whole ecosystems where our products are being deployed. And then we continued to, let's say, more specific acts and legislation related to the topic of our project. We started in a very specific time, so the European Critical Infrastructure Directive was still in force. The CER, or the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, was already adopted, but the member states were in a transitional phase. They need to transpose this directive into their national laws. So we had to think about what's valid now and what will come into the future. So we wanted to tackle and bring attention to the new obligations emerging from the new directives. The similar situation was with the NIS directive. We also looked into the Cybersecurity Act, the Cyber Resilience Act, and also some proposals that will become part of the regulation in near future, like the Cyber Solidarity Act. And I'm very happy to see that also other projects have been going through similar approach. And we also looked into the set of standards. So the smart grid security set of standards, supply chain cybersecurity frameworks, cybersecurity frameworks and guidelines. And we took everything and also considered the assets, actors, and data that were needed to deploy our products. And we have devised detailed pilot site description with relevant legislation and normative frameworks in place. And we mapped all the use cases and products to legislation and normative documents, which served as reference for the next phase of the project. And the next phase, as I said, was the product development phase. So in this stage, we took a cooperative approach with our partners, especially technology partners. The aim was quite simple, let's say. We wanted to detect any relevant legislative and normative issues that product leaders were faced during the development process of the products, but also on the other side, point out to requirements prescribed in legislation and standards that should be taken into account during the development process of the products. So we devised specific questionnaires for each of the 4 products. The questionnaires had the same structure, so we first addressed each of the products with some general questions, and then because each product actually is a set of separate tools, we looked into the specifics of each tools. So, and because they differ from one from another, we had specific questions for each tool. We are now in the phase of summarizing the findings from this phase, which would be, let's say, recommendations or lessons learned from this phase of the project. And in the next few slides, I will show you what were the outcomes from, let's say, this part of the project or this exercise. So we don't have time to go into all the products, but I will just shed some information, let's say, for the first one. C3PO, it has several tools, and here you can see sort of a mapping that we did. We have general questions for each product. So the leader of the product had to provide some descriptions about the product. Then we have some general questions that are the same for each of the tools, and as I said, some specific questions for each tool. Now the lighter green color is where we got, let's say, normally negative answers, and the bright green color is where we got normally positive answers, and the circles indicate where we have found, let's say, challenges, recommendations, or gaps. So to make this more understandable, let's look into the first example of some general recommendations coming from 2 tools, the spatial and temporal modeling of cascading events and quantification of cascading physical events, and resilience-driven instrument and operating planning to mitigate or prevent cascading effects. So our partners have observed that resilience should be clearly integrated as an operational and planning criteria in power systems, which is now not the case. And that more cooperation is required between regulatory authorities and industrial and academic communities to showcase how this can be done. So this is like a general recommendation, but we also have, let's say, in the next slides, you will see some more concrete proposals. We also have observed that legislation and standards related to microgrids to allow, let's say, for wider scale applications are not in place, and the meaning of microgrids has already been positively evaluated through research projects, especially in increasing the resilience of distribution systems. So there is a gap here that needs to be fulfilled. So moving to another tool, for example, the IRIS tool. This one has, let's say, 11 tools. The IRIS product has 11 tools, and from these tools, we also identified several tools which require, let's say, some changes in acts and legislation. For example, with regard to TSO-DSO planning coordination suits, the distributed energy resources are not adequately considered in the planning process of distribution systems, and therefore the flexibility of this distributed energy resources cannot be fully used to increase the resilience of the grids. So we need to take into account various aspects to increase their observability and the control of these assets to use them fully for the purpose of increasing resilience of the grid. And this can be done by changes in distribution network codes, which vary from country to country and are related to the operation of distribution system operators. For example, if we move on, we have another very specific recommendation coming from this tool. It is related to over-frequency protection, and our partners have observed that there is a lack of reference between the network code on emergency restoration and system operation guidelines. So we can observe this kind of missing reference that could be added to, let's say, ease the operation activities of TSOs. Further on, we have also observed changes that could be introduced in relation to dynamic stability of power systems. There is a gap here, or absence of obligations of real-time monitoring when offline studies detect possible problems with stability. So our technology partners also propose some changes in the system operation guidelines to bridge this gap. I will continue now with the methodology that is now being deployed, and it is about how we follow the deployment phase and how we try to look into the legislation and challenges when the actual products that are developed in the project are deployed on pilot sites. So look into product developers' challenges and end users' challenges, and we are developing a certain questionnaire to extract this information and make it, let's say, in a sort of clear recommendations for policy makers. Our focus will be for sure on critical entities resilience directive and on NIS2 directive, because as I mentioned before, there are a number of challenges for the end users, the TSOs and DSOs in this case, or the regional coordination centers. They need to respond to the obligations and requirements, and we want to see how the tools that are developed in our project can help them comply with these directives. And if there are any implementational challenges, we also want to point them out. And the outcome would be recommendations and lessons learned from the deployment phase. So finally, the aim of stretching the activities related to legislation and standardization in our project was to sort of use a consistent methodology over time and to follow each step of the project accordingly. We have already some observations made during the product development phase that show that resilience should be integrated as planning and operating criteria in power systems, that we need improved methodologies for distribution network planning to allow improved observability and control of distributed energy resources. There is a lack of legislation and standards related to microgrids integration, and again to use them in the to increase the resilience of our networks. And we have also come out to specific, very concrete proposals for, let's say, amending or slightly changing the existing network codes that could be seen as improvements and help transmission system operators to complete their tasks. So the lessons learned throughout the process will be introduced in one of the deliverables, the R2D2 project handbook. So thank you for the attention, and I hope I didn't take too much of the time.
No, it's perfect. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Are there any questions? Not only for Alexandra. I mean, we concluded the presentations for the final session anyway, so we have time for open discussion and questions for any of the speakers that are here. So feel free to raise your hand or type your questions in the chat. I know it was a long webinar, so
Yeah. And as I said, a lot of information to digest.
Exactly.
Perhaps, well, no question to be raised.
I mean, you can even email us afterwards if you have any questions, and we will make sure that they reach the right person. Thank you, Karin. So, yes,
Alexandra wants to say something.
Sorry, I will just use this opportunity to say that it was very interesting for me to see how various projects tackle the implementation of let's say the new directives, and how we are into this breach where the previous directives were in force, and there is some time for the let's say in our case TSOs and DSOs to comply, to align their obligations with the new directives. This was it was very interesting to see how the projects are working in these directions, and how the projects are helping let's say the end users to comply with these directives. It was for me, it was very interesting to see, let's say, the IRIS presentation before, and also Sunrise and others who have, let's say, different approaches, but again the goal is finally the same, to find important challenges and where we can help as a research community to move into directions to create, let's say, more resilient networks. It would be good to have this kind of workshops in the future as well, where we are in another stage of implementation of the projects, and we can share some additional information or exchange information, not only just critical infrastructure, to issues related to cybersecurity. And I think our project will be very much interested to follow this kind of activities and participate as well.
Thank you, Alexandra. I totally agree. We should have a follow-up with updates, follow-up webinar. Yelena, yes, please.
Yes, hi, hello. I'm driving and I didn't want to stop listening, so I'm driving with hands-free, so I'm okay and I'm safe. But I would like to maybe a comment, or formulate it to a question. Some of these projects are doing excellent new stuff in, let's just say, tools which are dealing with new technologies. In one of the ECSCI cluster in Praetorian, what we did was that we saw that end users needed a counter UAV system, but by the current legislation, it's forbidden. They are forbidden for using that kind of tools. Maybe can we plan somehow to raise a question to the legislator, in this sense commission, to do something about it? After, I don't think that is the only case in that project. Maybe in other projects we have different kind of tools which are needed, but critical infrastructure cannot use it by existing legislation.
Thank you, Yelena. I think, yeah, I mean, we can reach out to Monica. It was presented in the morning, and we can discuss it and see if she can help us, because she's from the Commission. So thank you for raising this. I think it's it worth, you know, trying to raise the question. So thank you.
Anyone else?
See.
All right. So Mariana, I suggest that. Sophia.
No, I'll just replying to Yelena on what she very precisely mentioned, which is indeed a very significant need. How we actually address the constraints the regulations impose on augmenting the security actually for new threats that are emerging.
Okay.
Thank you, Sophia. Is it a public panel? I mean,
it's physical only. It's not
it's physical.
I'm afraid.
Okay. Okay. I was just going to ask to provide the link for anyone that wants to join, but okay. Okay. So I think if there are no other questions, we can close the webinar. I mean, a special thank you to
maybe
everyone.
Just one thing, Mariana.
Yeah, sure. If you have,
there will be a press release after this webinar. So if you know, reading it, some questions just cross your mind, feel free to reach out, and we will make sure that we provide you with a relevant and complete answer, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So thank you to all the panelists for sharing their expertise and insights, and of course to everyone, all the attendees. Thank you. As a reminder, the webinar is recorded, so you will be able to access it later on the EU-CIP Knowledge Hub and on the ATLANTIS website. So stay tuned for the publication of the recording and the press release. We look forward to connecting with you again for future sessions. So thank you everyone again, and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Special thanks to all the speakers, and especially those who participated from very different time difference locations. It's been very appreciated, and no wonder that your insight will be very helpful in the near future. And thank you to you, Mariana.
And to you, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Have
a nice rest of the day, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.